Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, special guests. Thank you so much for joining us for our regular meeting of the Town of Pelham Council for Monday, October 6th. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting to order. We will begin with an invocation led by Councillor Durley, followed by the singing of the national anthem, which will be led by Councillor Papp. I would ask all that are able to rise.
Dear God, who is so great and has given us grace to make our common goals unto thee, and who does promise that when two or more of us who are so small are gathered unto your name, you will grant their requests. Lord, we supplicate your blessings upon this assembly. Fulfill now, O Lord, the petitions of thy servants as may be expected of them. Grant all in his council chambers the knowledge of trust, justice, and honor in all considerations placed before them. Provide us in this chamber, O Lord, strong, open minds and clear, discerning spirit as we deliberate over the business of our town, that we may forever forward move to ensure the town of Pelham continues to be a vibrant, caring, and creative community. We thank God for the many blessings bestowed upon us. May God bless all in our community and grant us in this chamber the wisdom, will, generosity, determination, and good conscience to guide the town of Pelham through the challenges and successes that lie ahead. Amen.
Amen. O Canada, our home and native land, true patron of, in all thy songs command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Councillor Durley. Thank you, Councillor Papp, and thank you to our trained singer who is also singing along. So thank you. Perhaps we should have had you, not that you did a bad job, Councillor Papp.
I did a bad job.
We should have had you perhaps lead us in the singing of the national anthem. The first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that the agenda for the October 6, 2014 regular meeting of council be adopted. Are there any additions or changes to that? Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one item I'd like to move. An item currently in our Committee of the Whole agenda, item 522, which deals with the Horton Municipal Drain. And I'd like to move it onto this council's meeting as item 13.2.6 as a staff report requiring action.
13.2.6. Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Lane? Any discussion to that? There being none, I call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Councillor Papp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under presentations, following the presentation of 7.1.2 Wellspring Lease Agreement, I would like to add another item dealing with the Code of Conduct complaint filed with the town of Pelham. And I'd like to insert that after, I guess it would be 7.1.3, and then the fire station update would be, I guess, 7.1.4.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey, you'll second that motion? Okay, thank you very much, and I presume in that we'll also be receiving the Code of Conduct complaint publicly. Any discussion to that amendment? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is any conflicts of interest?
You need to do the agenda as adopted.
Oh, I'm sorry. We do have to do that. I was signing my name here, so it's now the agenda as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. The next item is conflicts of interest. That is any pecuniary interest that councillors need to disclose. Are there any pecuniary interests that Councilors need to disclose? Can that be noted in the minutes? Thank you. The first item is a presentation from the cadets, recognition of the 613 Army Cadet Corps top small cadet corps in Western Ontario, and the best small cadet corps on all of Ontario. Thank you very much for joining us. If you could introduce yourselves and those that are with you.
Good evening. I am Warrant Officer Giovinazzo. I'm here with 613 Army Cadets. With me today is Warrant Officer Ardell, Master Warrant Officer Hamilton, and Warrant Officer Chason.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of councils, guests, and Pelham townspeople. First of all, we would like to thank you on behalf of the 613 family for your constant support. We could not be where we are today without you all. As many of you know, this year the 613 Army Cadets received 2 awards. The Lord Strathcona Award for Top Small Cadet Corps in Southwestern Ontario, as well as the League Award for Top Small Corps in Ontario. These awards are not new to 613.
On Wednesday, September 24th, the 613 Lincoln and Welland Regiment Army Cadets received a very prestigious award. Major Lloyd Sainsbury, the Western Ontario Area Cadet Detachment Commander, attended Branch 613 Royal Canadian Legion to present Captain Lynn Giovinazzo, the commanding officer of the cadet unit, the Lord Strathcona Award for the top small Army Cadet unit in Western Ontario. Western Ontario consists of 35 small Army Cadet units. Located between Windsor and Fort Erie, the Army Cadet units are broken down into large and small corps. 613 are considered a small corps, parading under 50 cadets weekly.
The Lord Strathcona Award is presented yearly to the top cadet corps in the Western Ontario area for their successes during their past year of training. 613 Army Cadets showed proficiency in their cadet and attendance participation in local and regional activities, and as well as competitions. Their community involvement was also a definite factor in winning this award. 37 cadets stood to attention, proudly at attention for their parents, representatives of the branch of 613, Mayor Dave Augustine, the Lincoln and Welland Regiment, and the Army Cadet League of Ontario, while Major Sainsbury presented the award. Ontario is broken down into 4 areas: Western, Eastern, Northern, and Central. Each area is chosen for top and large cadet corps to win the Lord Strathcona Award.
From there, each area's winners looked at to decide who will win the Army Cadet Trophy, which is for representing the top corps in Ontario. This year, 613 won the league trophy as well as the Lord Strathcona Shield. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Dan Matthews attended as well on the 24th and presented 613 with a trophy and a check for $500. This is the 4th time in the last 5 years 613 has won the Strathcona Award, and the 2nd time in the last 3 years they have won the League Army Cadet Trophy.
These awards are a reflection of the constant dedication shown on all levels of our cadet family. Our cadets always volunteer for every activity available, such as Remembrance and Canada Day activities. We will put forth every effort to support this community as you have always supported us. We also compete within the cadet organization, which helps us with such awards. This past weekend, we participated in the orienteering competition, where a female team ranked 3rd in our region, and our 2 intermediate females, which happened to be Miss Giovinazzo and myself, ranked 1st and 2nd as individuals.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We also participate in our shooting competitions each year. However, the thing that puts us over the top is effort. The constant effort of our officers are exceptional. The effort of the town is even more important. You're present at all our events and behind us every step of the way. Without the support of a strong community behind them, a cadet corps cannot exceed. So once again, we thank you for all your support and hope you enjoyed our presentation.
Thank you very much. A round of applause. I would actually ask Councilor Ribiak as Deputy Mayor to join me. I'd like to present something on behalf of Council. On behalf of Councilor Ribiak and all of Council and the entire community, I'd like to present this to you. This is a recognition of your award of merit. It says, Council of the Town of Pelham extends congratulations and best wishes in recognition of your accomplishments as the top small cadet corps in Western Ontario and the best small top cadet corps in Ontario, October 6, 2014. We are so proud of you. And I said this the other night when I was with you. We are so proud of your activities and your involvement in our community. You help make our community much better because of your involvement in the things that you talked about, whether it's Canada Day or Remembrance Day services or anything else that comes up, like the services for the Ward 1812 commemoration. Singing at the tea in honor of the Queen. So congratulations and thank you so much. We are very, very proud of you. And I'm sure all of council would like to congratulate you. We'd like to go on. Okay, congratulations. Let's give them another round of applause.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work. Fantastic. Congratulations. Awesome. Way to go. Well done.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Well done.
All the best. Congratulations.
Thank you again, and congratulations. You are welcome to stay for the meeting, but we understand that you have other tasks to attend to, so you may also leave. So please feel free to do so. Our next, thank you very much. Thanks so much for coming. Thank you. Next on our agenda is presentation by Callum Shedden, who is our legal advisor regarding the Wellspring lease agreement. Good evening, Mr. Shedden. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Mayor, members of council and staff. I have a brief presentation with respect to the Wellspring lease, which I understand has been circulated. Back in the spring, council entered into a memorandum of understanding with Wellspring with respect to the lease of a portion of the town lands in East Font Hill Secondary Plan area for use by Wellspring for construction of a building. The memorandum of understanding is simply a statement of intent and was intended to be followed up with a lease, which is intended to be a binding legal document setting out the terms of the memorandum of understanding and also some additional legal language to make the lease enforceable. As we discussed back at the time, what we're doing is establishing a ground lease. So the town maintains ownership of the land, Wellspring constructs the building, and is responsible for all costs in that regard and all ongoing operational costs with respect to the building. So some highlights of the lease agreement are that it's for an initial term of 20 years. There are 3 renewal terms at Wellspring's option, two renewal terms, each for an additional 20 years. The annual rent is $1, and additional rent is any other expenses that are incurred with respect to the property. So it's a net lease for the town. The town doesn't incur any expenses with respect to the property. So as was intended back when the memorandum of understanding was signed, the town is providing the property, Wellspring will provide the building, and that relationship will continue as long as Wellspring operates its center at this location. The lease also provides, as was in the memorandum of understanding, that if Wellspring were to cease operations, the town has options. The town can purchase the building for fair market value, or if the town chooses not to do that, then the property would be sold, and there's a formula where the town would receive payment for the value of the land, and Wellspring would receive payment for the value of the building. So there are a couple of blanks still to be filled in. The lease provides that the town will sign off on the plans, the construction plans, so that the town is involved in terms of ensuring that the building that's going to go up is satisfactory to the town. The timing on that will depend on Wellspring and when it has its plans prepared. We also are preparing, as part of the overall development of the East Fonthill lands, a reference plan is being prepared to create a legal description. So we don't have, at this time, an accurate legal description of the land, so we can't put one in. But that's in process. And I think tonight what you're being asked to do is approve the form and content of the lease. And there will be some additional information that will have to be attached, and I expect this will come back to council at some later date once the initial plans have been prepared and once we have a reference plan. I think this is the next step in moving the Wellspring project forward. And that's basically what I have to say. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have with respect to the lease.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shedden, for your presentation, for your work on the lease. I wonder if members of council have any questions? Councillor Papp?
Quickly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Shedden, does any of the additional changes or the additions to the agreement would require procedurally for us to review and approve once again?
Yes, because
can they
we're
be-
adding a schedule to the lease, which would be the plans, and the lease contemplates that council would approve those plans.
Okay.
So I think it would be a brief,
Right.
another brief appearance, but
Okay.
the form and content would be approved, and that would allow Wellspring to move ahead with their plans because they've got a document that's been approved by council. And it's not just a statement of intent, it's intended to be, this is going to be the binding document.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, the only reason I asked is to facilitate execution of the agreement. I was just thinking that if it could be done, but if it requires council bringing it back, that's no problem.
Yeah, I would recommend that it come back to council once
you.
we have the plans for council's approval.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Shedden, I have a couple of questions pertaining to priority with respect to the land. And I don't know whether Wellspring will be having a mortgage on title, but I wondered if, and I read through the agreement that this agreement will not be registered on title. And so if there is a mortgage register on title, that's a cloud on our land taking priority over the lease? And how do we protect ourselves in that case?
Well, the title to the land will still remain with Pelham, so any mortgage that would occur would be a leasehold mortgage, and it could only attach to the interest that Wellspring has, which is the building. And pursuant to the terms of your lease, Wellspring's always the owner of the building. So in terms of enforcement, the mortgage will be subject to the agreement with the town, because the town has terms in the mortgage that say this property can only be used, this lease will only continue as long as it's used for Wellspring or some other use that the town approves. So the town doesn't want to be in a position where you're leasing the land for $1 to a commercial operation. So any financing, if there was an enforcement proceeding, anyone who was coming in would have to come and talk to you, because the lease is going to be terminated unless they meet the town's criteria for a charitable organization. So again, I think you're protected in the fact that you retain title to the lands, and that was part of the thought process under the memorandum of understanding, was keeping ownership with the town.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a follow-up, I presume then the same legal argument would be in place for a construction lien?
Now, a construction lien will attach to the land simply because that's how Construction Lien Act works, as I'm sure you're aware.
Right.
It would attach to the land, it would be Wellspring's obligation to clear it, and they would have, again, a difficult time in enforcing a construction lien under the terms of this lease. They could try to sell the land. I'm not sure who would want to buy it under these terms. But there is a provision in here on construction liens that specifies that Wellspring's fully responsible for those.
Thank you.
As a follow-up, failing which?
Failing which, you terminate the lease.
As a follow-up, Mr. Mayor, what impact would that have then on the construction lien that's registered on title?
Well, what you would be doing, in worst-case scenario, you would be selling the property yourself. I think I understand, we're hoping for the best and planning for the worst.
Right.
So I understand your question. What I expect would happen if there was a construction lien. Wellspring's responsible for that. If Wellspring's not going to be able to satisfy a construction lien on the property, then I think the whole thing's going to fall apart. And you're back to a situation where you decide, do you want the building in its present shape, or do you want to sell it, or do you want to enter some other arrangement? But that, if Wellspring's not able to meet its financial commitments, then the lease would be terminated, would be my recommendation.
Thank you. And my comments are not a reflection on the honesty of the participants at Wellspring or in any way. I'm just looking to find out the municipality and the corporation's position in these issues.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, one last question. Failure to pay taxes as additional rent. We find ourselves in a bit of a conundrum in that we're the landlord, but we're also the taxing authority. Which power takes precedent? The landlord's power as a default under the lease, or do we have to go through the process of a sale under the taxing authority?
You have your rights under the lease in addition to your rights as a municipality. Again, I would expect that it's easier and quicker to enforce your rights under the lease rather than waiting the required period under the Municipal Act for taxes. So these rights are in addition to what you have.
Okay, thank you. Thanks
Okay,
very much.
Thank you very much. Others? I do note Ms. Mantini is here, Executive Director of Wellspring. Thank you very much for joining us. Is there anything else you would like to add for council's information?
I would just like to add,
Thank you.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Sheldon, for the presentation. And just a thank you on behalf of Wellspring Niagara for providing this opportunity to build a regional cancer support center here in your community. Since the Memorandum of Understanding was signed in April, there's quite a bit of excitement and anticipation for this build to happen. We've been waiting for this opportunity for tonight to take place so we can now formally move forward. We are now in the process of seeking an architect and confirming that architect to help with the design, and we'll hopefully be by the end of the year or early 2015 launching our capital campaign. And we anticipate a very, very successful campaign. There's, as I mentioned, quite a bit of excitement over this, and we just can't wait to have a new home to better meet the needs of our members who come to Wellspring day after day. So again, thank you for being leaders in our region and for really believing in Wellspring's mission to provide the emotional, psychological support to people living with cancer in the Niagara region and their family members and caregivers. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. It's important, I'm going to say on behalf of council, it's important for all of Niagara that Wellspring have a home, and we know that you were looking for a long time, and you provide those safe supports and encouragement for victims of cancer and their families. And on behalf of council, we're so pleased that we're able to do this to assist essentially all of those victims across Niagara. So thank you very much. Any further questions for Mr. Shedden? So we now thank you, Mr. Shedden, and thank you, Ms. Mantini, for your presentation. I do have a motion moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Rubiak, that the information presented by Mr. Callum Shedden, legal counsel on behalf of the Town of Pelham, being the proposed lease agreement between the Town of Pelham and Wellspring Niagara, be received, and that the clerk be directed to provide notice in accordance with the town's disposal of surplus lands bylaw, and further, that the clerk be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw for consideration by council at their next regular meeting. Any further comments? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you so much, Mr. Shedden, for that, and for your hard work. Congratulations, Ms. Mantini. Please pass along all of our best wishes to the board. Thank you. Mr. Shedden, we added an additional item regarding the Code of Conduct complaint. And we'd ask you to address council in relation to this, maybe give us information about the receipt of this complaint and your thoughts on it.
All right. A complaint was received last Friday, and the substance of the complaint is that the person who filed the complaint takes issue with the approval of the agreement with Font Hill Gardens, and that's the agreement that deals with the grant of an option to purchase some town lands in the East Font Hill Secondary Plan area. It also deals with the town's option to purchase some Font Hill Gardens lands, and a cost-sharing agreement in terms of the development of the land for the mutual benefit of the town and Font Hill Gardens. The complaint, and I'll just read from it, it's my position, council's actions in selling these lands has violated the purpose of the code of conduct to enhance public confidence that elected representatives operate with integrity, transparency, justice, courtesy, and respect. I have a number of concerns with the complaint as filed. In my opinion, this is not an appropriate use of the Code of Conduct complaint process. The complaint that's filed attacks a decision of council. It doesn't specify any conduct of any individual members that would be said to be contrary to the Code of Conduct. It alleges that in making the decision, council did not act in accordance with the Code of Conduct. I have a great difficulty with that position because the town has a bylaw that sets out specific rules for the sale of land by the council. And I was fully involved as counsel for the town with the negotiations with Font Hill Gardens with respect to the cost sharing and option to purchase agreement. I appeared at this council, I believe on 2 occasions, to discuss that process and that agreement. The reason for my involvement was to ensure that everything was in accordance with the bylaw. So I have no hesitation in telling you, in my opinion, council followed its bylaw, and that the process followed by the town in approving the agreement with Font Hill Gardens was fully in compliance with the town's bylaw in terms of what is required of a town to sell property. So in my opinion, the complaint itself is without merit. There was one issue that was raised, and the complaint is very thick and it's not page numbered, so it's probably hard for you to follow along, but the one complaint that was an allegation that the town did not follow its process in terms of what's required to sell a piece of property relates to the requirement for council to include in any agreement a requirement that the buyer pay the town's costs. In fact, that is in the agreement. We have granted, as a town, the town has granted an option to purchase. The costs at this time are not known in terms of what it will cost the town to sell the land. For that reason, the agreement with Font Hill Gardens contains a provision that the purchase price will include the per acre value. It will include all costs of the town in terms of advertising, in terms of surveying. All of the costs that are applicable will be added to the purchase price. So there is no contravention of the town's bylaw. And I'm 100% certain on that. Now, so my conclusion is I don't see how the town council and mayor can be found to be in violation of a code of conduct when town council has followed its own bylaw in approving a sale. And again, I have to emphasize, there weren't specific incidents that were complained of. It's just the decision. So in my view, that's not an appropriate matter for a code of conduct complaint. When council passes a bylaw, if someone objects to it, their remedy is to bring a motion in court, bring a motion to quash the bylaw. That's the appropriate remedy, because then a judge will look at what council did and say yes or no, did you follow the rules? And if the judge decides the rules weren't followed, the bylaw is quashed. it's really not appropriate to have the code of conduct complaint process basically subverted to slide in instead of a court process which is in place. So in my view, it's an abuse of the complaint, the code of conduct complaint system to bring this type of complaint. If you want to complain about a specific matter in terms of conduct of an elected official or staff, that's what it's about. It's not about complaining about a decision of council that has been made by all of council. And I would also just say that this type of complaint process where you have to hire an integrity commissioner or a mediator, it's an expensive process for the town. No doubt I will be involved as town's legal counsel. You'll have to pay the fees of the integrity commissioner. It's a lot of money. And in my view, it's not warranted to proceed with this complaint. The complaint is, it's outside the scope of what the code of conduct is there for. I think it's the type of complaint that if someone has a concern about a bylaw passed by the town council, they need to seek the appropriate remedy, which is go to court. Don't bring in a complaint 6 months after the fact and try to have a decision of council revisited where there's no remedy that the complaint process can offer with respect to the bylaw that's been approved. So it's the wrong process, it's inappropriate, and council should not proceed with this complaint, in my opinion. My recommendation to council is that the complainant be advised that it's an inappropriate complaint, it's outside the scope of the code of conduct complaint process, and that the town council will be not proceeding with having the complaint reviewed. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shedden, for your presentation and for outlining that. Do members of council have any questions for our legal counsel? Councillor Papp?
Thank you, Mr. Shedden. I guess my question through you, Mr. Mayor, is then, if the decision is not to proceed with council to review the complaint, what steps do we take? Does the corporation officially notify the complainant, or is that done by town council?
I think town council should pass a resolution tonight to notify the complainant that the town council has reviewed it and upon legal advice has determined that this is not an appropriate complaint and that it will not be proceeded with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any others? Thank you very much, Mr. Shedden, for your presentation. I do have a motion. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Lane, that the Code of Conduct complaint submitted by Mr. Craig Lorimer be received, and that the complainant be advised that the town will not be proceeding with the appointment of an independent mediator or integrity commissioner, as this complaint is outside of the scope of the Code of Conduct complaint process. Any further discussion? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you again, Mr. Shedden, for informing us about that and providing us with legal advice. We continue on the agenda. Thank you. We continue on the agenda. Next is a presentation regarding Fire Station number 3, and I believe the Fire Chief will be presenting. I had hoped for some others, Chief, but I guess they're working and not available, so.
Unfortunately, there's 4 committee members, 2 are working shifts and the other 2 are away on holidays, so they asked me if I could do this for the group, so.
Thank you.
I'll proceed.
I believe it's just loading up. You have a wonderful presentation with photos. Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations. I don't know what happens at 1, but we're going to find out, I guess. There we go.
Goes on 0.
The line sequence.
Nancy, is there a mute on this? Yeah, like the volume, right, on this.
Should have this. I apologize, everyone, for the technical difficulties.
Yeah.
It really is a mostly visual presentation, so.
There you go.
No, I don't need that. I want.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chief?
Okay. Mayor, members of council, senior staff, public who are present. The good news is that we anticipate this Friday, the 10th or the 9th, we'll be receiving the keys for the new fire station number 3. And just to kind of let you know what's going on prior to these the next few days, just we put a couple pictures together, and so I didn't do that, so I wanted to mute it. So all the pavement's done all around the building. Just this is a rear of the building facing north. All the lines are painted. The curbing's done. There's no plants or anything, and the hydro seeding's done on the east end of the property. This is the property looking south, and this is basically the property line. There's, if you look at the kind of the purpley or brownish looking vegetation on the right, that's the property line. That's the ditch that runs along, and this is the southernmost boundary of the property. This is a 33,000-gallon water cistern that we were required to install. It was an additional cost after the fact, and you remember we had come back to council last year and asked for some additional budgetary increases. This is a requirement from the underwriters for the insurance. We're required to supply a water supply in that district. They no longer recognize rivers, ponds, creeks, whatever outdoor sources. It either has to have a pressurized source or a dry hydrant source. So this represents a considerable amount of water that's available in 3 districts. This is the inside looking at the bays. They're just putting the final touches, putting electrical lights up. The steel wall, the walls are all steel cladded. Floors are all done, drains. It's just kind of some finishing touches. This is the tube, radiant tube heating, automatic garage door openers. That's all just kind of quick finishing touches that are going on. Sorry. That's why the 4 guys bailed on me, because they said so this is just a kind of projection or project expenditure and the results. We originally budgeted for $1.3 million. We came back to council and asked for an additional $100,000 because of the water cistern and a few other items that came out of the design costs. So we ended up with a $1.4 million budget. As you can see, there is a few slight overages on land acquisition. There was some legal costs and survey stuff that kind of took us over a bit. On the building permit, there was a little bit on the septic side that kind of increased. Hydro, there was just a few things, but we were able to, we had the furniture equipment in the soft costs. We had some money built into there, so we're using that as a floater. And currently right now we're finalizing the rest of the soft costs, which are fridge, stove, microwave, furniture, stuff like that. So we're right in online. Thank you very much to the treasurer for all her input and eagle eye. And I project that when we take the keys over next week, that we will be within or slightly under this number.
Here, here. Very good.
And this is basically the final shot. This is the front view looking east. 2 bays, there's 2x2 bays. The front entrance, the stonework, the steel, the roof, everything is done. Just as I said, the painters are just finishing up a few items. The electrician's in just doing a few other things, and said Friday is the day. That's it.
Thank you very much, Chief. Question about the grand opening?
Yes, so the grand opening is slated for the Saturday the 18th. We're 11 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. The association members, fire group, are going to be putting on, providing food. We're going to have a barbecue. There'll be coffee and refreshments. The fire prevention division is going to have kids' activities. We're going to have the squirt house and bunker gear and a variety of different things. So there's going to be a lot of activities for young kids and older. Tour of the building. We're anticipate the presentations, the hose cutting, your speeches starting at around noon that day, and we'll move on.
Thank you, Chief. Questions for our Chief from members of council? Councilor Papp, start it again. Go ahead.
Very quickly, through you, Mr. Mayor, just refresh my memory. How many vehicles can we actually, firefighting vehicles can we put in there? 2 or 4?
4.
4.
It's
Okay.
2 by 2.
2 by 2.
deep.
Okay. 2 on each side.
Thank you. Councilor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just above those doors would be a great place to have the shield like you have at Station 2. Is there anticipated that that will be added?
Above the 2 bay doors are actually going to be the black block lettering. That's the same as Station 2.
Yeah.
As far as a plaque for the 3 short hills, we haven't decided. They do have an emblem, but we haven't really decided. We're going to wait till we move in.
Okay.
And then the guys are going to kind of decide where that's going to go.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any others? Thank you very much for the update. After 13 years in a temporary location, it's great and certainly fitting that we provide appropriate firefighting facility in the northern part of our community. So thank you very much, Chief, for that update. We look forward to the opening on the 18th. Thank you. Now we move to delegations. The first delegation is regarding the Pelham Supper Market Committee 2014 synopsis, and I believe Mr. Nichols going to present. Will you be joined by Ms. Ashby? No, she's just here for support. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Ashby. Mr.
Thank
Nichols,
you,
thank you for
Mayor
joining.
Augustine and members of council. It is indeed a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is John Nichol, and as a member of the Supper Market Committee, I have been requested by the committee to give comments on our inaugural 11-week summer event here at Peace Park and to support council's recommendation under report 2014-09-26003. Chair Lee Atherton extends her regrets for not being able to be here tonight. However, business out of town needed her attention. With me, as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, is Candy Ashby, Vice Chair of our committee and also one of our 7 vendors. She's here to, I'm sure, assist me if any questions that you may have. It is with pleasure to report that council's approval of the supper market on Thursday evenings from June 12th to September 4, 2014 has been a resounding success. Our goal to showcase local culinary businesses in cooperation with the already successful Farmers Market and Bandshell was very well received by the large crowds who attended Peace Park and made Pelham the place to be on late Thursday afternoons and evenings. Our venue also gave us the opportunity to showcase some of Ontario's breweries and wineries. All who participated have expressed a very enthusiastic willingness to participate next year should council decide to continue with the supper market. At a joint meeting of our committee with representatives of both the Farmers Market and Bandshell committees on September 29th, there was unanimous agreement to continue to work together to market and promote downtown Fonthill as a destination of choice for social fun and entertainment on Thursday evenings during the summer months. Constructive feedback as to the supper market included the suggestion to expand upon our current vendors to allow even more culinary selection and enhanced food selections and experiences. It is in this regard that the supper market recommends that the terms of reference be amended to give Pelham vendors first priority to participate, however also allow other food vendors from outside Pelham to also be given consideration by the committee to participate in future years. 3 committees also discussed comments we had received from patrons as to expanding opportunities to showcase local talent by providing music a few hours prior to the Bandshell event in the vicinity of our vendors and to expand the license area to include the north portion of the park. All were supportive, all three committees were supportive of these suggestions, so long as there continued to be non-alcohol areas of the park for children and time for the guest artists to set up their music systems in the band shell. We believe these suggested changes would further promote the community spirit of the evening and showcase Pelham's diversity and community vibrancy. The committee representatives also discussed the development of a cross-marketing promotion plan to help grow all three events and to update the events on a weekly basis as to guest band, supper market, and farmers market seasonal and food vendor offerings. We believe social media could also be enhanced for not only the aforementioned updates, but also to promote bike and foot traffic, as well as awareness of shuttle services across the community, should it be made available in future years. The Pelham Supper Market Committee is pleased to advise Council that our preliminary financial report indicates revenue of $10,400, expenses of approximately $4,500, and resultant surplus of some $5,900. The committee requests Council consideration to designate $2,000 of the surplus for a future supper market operational expense such as retention of a supper market clerk. We further recommend the remaining balance of some $3,900 be allocated to the Peace Park Town Improvement Project. We would be remiss not to express a very sincere appreciation to Councillors Kersey and Papp, as well as town staff, who greatly assisted and made our events very successful. Thanks to them and the dedication of your 2014 Supper Committee and volunteers, we are positive that the town of Pelham has the opportunity to open its doors to Niagara and beyond as to the place to be on Thursday, summer late afternoons and evenings. Thank you, Council, for your support. It is with pleasure that I present the report, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nickel, for your report and for your leadership on the supper market. We appreciate it. Do members of council have any questions for Mr. Nickel? I do. The supper, what's it called here? The clerk, the supper market clerk. What is that? What is that role? Is that similar to the farmers market?
Same
I think what the committee has in mind for that role is to actually save some of the dedicated time that town of Pelham staff were involved in. To be frank, we thought they were overly generous, and we believe that it's only appropriate that we have some sort of assistance on a continuous basis, and that way have a clerk that we would employ for summer student, for example, during the summer months, apply for grant, et cetera. And that way alleviate some of the time that your town staff have generously put forward to the committee.
So it's similar to Mr. Diltz with the farmers market?
Yes.
Correct? Okay. That's great. Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? Thank you for the report and saying it's a resounding success. I'm going to read the motion here. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Kersey, that the Pelham Supper Market Delegation Report submitted by the Supper Market Committee be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as follows. That $2,000 of the supper market surplus be retained for future supper market operational expenses, which may include the retention of a supper market clerk, and that the remaining balance of approximately $3,900 be allocated to the Peace Park Town Improvement Project. Any questions, comments? Councillor Durley, did you want to, no? Councillor Papp, sorry.
Yeah, very quickly, I thank you, Mr. Nickel. Even though, thank you for the accolades to us as councillors and the staff, I think we would be remiss if we didn't say to the committee, the work that you did as volunteers to help us get through this first phase was actually at times very taxing, but in the end, you truly showed your abilities to work together as a collaborative group, and that was clearly demonstrated last week when we met with all three groups, the concert series and the market group, and really we came together and we basically said, let's put aside our misunderstandings and move on. And the key of this is that there are several of our colleagues from surrounding communities who came to this festival, if you want to call it, during those nights that all three events were on, and are trying to replicate that in our community, and can't believe how well it worked. So to you, the members of the committee, the volunteer group, and that's, I want to stand on behalf of Councillor Kersey, and I know on behalf of Council and all the members of staff too, you guys were a very important part of that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Papp. and agreement all around. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say what I'm hearing from just about everybody, that it was not only a resounding success, but a very enjoyable way to spend Thursday evenings. You folks did a fantastic job. Nothing but kudos from everybody that I'm speaking to on the street, so congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor. Others? There being none, then I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you again, Mr. Nichol, Ms. Ashby, for that. Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I ask Council's indulgence to, there is another issue on the agenda tonight under Staff Reports for Action, number 1325, the Pelham Supermarket 2014 Final Report. I wonder if we could move that forward to this point in the agenda. Can I move that?
Thank you very much. Councillor King will second that. Any discussion to that? So this is the motion to move it up, move the report up to this proceeding, and then we'll deal with the report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Is this correct? Okay, so this has been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey, and for those that are watching it, it's moving report 1325, the Supper Market Final Report. So it's been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey. The council received the issue sheet regarding the Pelham Supper Market 2014 Final Report, and the council support and endorse the Pelham Supper Market be continued on an annual basis, and that the terms of reference be revised to permit non-Pelham vendors to participate but retain the priority given to Pelham businesses, and further that the licensed area expand to include the entire north portion of the park utilizing the existing pavilion as a serving area. Discussion to this? Who wants to go first? Councillor Lane.
Yes, thank you. Just for clarification, I'm wondering, what are we calling the north portion of the park? Where is that delineated exactly?
Ms. Van Ravensway?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The north portion of the park would include the sail pavilion area, and that's where the alcohol would be served out of proper, as we do for the Summerfest evening, although it would cut across so that the bandshell portion and the top of the theater area would remain as a non-alcoholic area. And it would also give the supper market a larger area to expand the vendors. One of the issues that we found that if one of our vendors couldn't make it, we had a hard time supplying, the need. And this way we would have more opportunity to have additional vendors as well.
Thank you, Ms. Van Ravensway. Thank you. Councillor Rubiak, I think you were, and then Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think half the question was asked by Councillor Lane. The other half of my question had to do with the actual food preparation area. I understand it needs to meet certain standards. That's going to be expanded presumably through you, Mr. Mayor, at the north end. Is that going to require some work? Is that going to require some expense? Can you fill us in a little bit?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. By doing that, we would also be able to perhaps use the concrete area around the flagpole as well for vendors if needed. And what we will be doing is we have control over the vendors, and some of the vendors are able to go on to the grassed area, and if so, through the health regulations, they will be on the grass area instead of the asphalted area. So we have control to place them as we see fit, depending on the vendors that we have.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for clarification, I'm hearing no work, no cost associated with that.
We have no money, so we will make it work.
Good.
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just wondering, is there an upper limit as to the number of food vendors that will be in the supper market? Now, there's saying that we'll keep it to local people, but we'll ask some people from out of town possibly. Is there an upper limit, or is there a standard by which you would like to see a certain number at each supper market event?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, we wanted to make it an enjoyable experience. We do not want to have a large amount of vendors, whereas they're taking up the space. We would rather have additional space for additional picnic tables in both areas, the non-alcoholic area as well as the area where you serve. So we could expand, we're expecting to expand additional, maybe up to 5 vendors. It's not a huge amount. If we had a total of 12 vendors, we would be happy.
Anything further, Councilor?
No, I just curious as to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others? Thank you. I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you again, Mr. Nicol, Ms. Ashby, for your work on this. It's certainly, as your report states, a resounding success and one of the things for which Pelham is known in the summer. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is a presentation regarding the pedestrian crosswalk at Pancake and Pelham. It's Ms. Helen Wismer. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your patience this evening. We had a long lead up to your delegation, so thank you for being patient.
I really, Honorable Mayor, Councilman, the reason I'm here is the crosswalk at Pelham and Pancake Lane. I've lived in this town for 50 years, lived on Pancake Lane the whole time. The increase in traffic, the people that, subdivisions that are, realize that Pancake Lane now is a thoroughfare that's got lots of traffic. We were really thrilled when we saw the lights going up, and we thought, wow, we're going to get stoplights there. The crosswalk, we feel, is not suitable. I had petitioned the area and got 141 names signed. They were excited that somebody had stepped forward and wanted to let them know that this is not suitable. Some of the mothers who are been told that their children no longer will be picked up by bus because they consider that a safe walk, which it isn't, because anybody walking on Pancake Lane on the south have to cross to the north to get to the sidewalk to go to the street, the school. And so they're quite concerned. I really would like the town to look into putting a 4-way stop light, just like on Port Robinson Road and Pelham Street. That would make it safe to walk across both Pelham Street South and Pancake Lane. Because right now, to cross Pancake Lane, there's no crosswalk. And people there, I've noticed that a lot of times the people were lined up 4 or 5 and they're waiting a long time for traffic on Pelham Street, and it isn't safe for them to make a left-hand turn if there's going to be people crossing in that. So that's my presentation.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your work going door to door. I wonder if members of council have any, would you entertain questions?
Why not?
Okay, so do members of council have any questions for Ms. Wismer? I guess there aren't any. It's very, very straightforward. Councilor,
Not a question, but I do have a comment. In knocking on doors over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've heard a lot of input in this regard, and there's a great deal of concern. Now, it's my understanding that when the study for something done at this crossing was first done, there were warrants that needed to be met that weren't met, and I'll ask through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps to Mr. Mantle, to explain the process by which the warrants were met or not met.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mantle.
For a 4-way stoplight.
Through you, Mr. Mayor,
Maybe you can sit down so you're not blinded.
If council recall, that signal was installed, the council approved a traffic signal, full signal at that location, I believe last year as part of the budget process or the year before. And through mediation with some of the residents in the area, it was decided that a pedestrian crosswalk would be the best avenue to follow with that. And in addition, the pedestrian crosswalks were also installed at Spruce Side Crescent and the bottom of Churchill. So that's kind of what led us to that. And it was felt the intersection did not meet the warrants for a signal anyways. It was simply the traffic volume is not great enough at this time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor
Okay,
Dillon?
that's, yeah, just wanted to bring that forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councillor Pat?
Just picking up with what Councilor Durley is saying, and through you, Mr. Mano, can we undertake another traffic flow study? Is that, I can't remember. I remember the extensive discussion we had about the flow down that street. Can we proceed to, how to say, validate one way or the other the flow of traffic so it could help Mrs. Wismer? Because I'm hearing the same thing.
We've shut off the light, Mr. Mantle, so if you wouldn't mind, thank you, so we can see you. Thank
Through
you.
you, Mr. Mayor, we certainly can do an additional study. Their traffic counts are scheduled for this year, for this fall. So we'll do the counts, and we can certainly budget for an analysis by a specialist that deals with that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pat?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's what I basically, Mr. Mayor, that if you can do that, then at least we can validate, because we went through quite an extensive dialogue, and we did all the analysis on that, and I understand the warrants now, but it may merit, I have to say too, I've lived in that area for over 30 years, and the traffic flow has increased. And there's been some other issues about people not sure how that cross signal works. So it'd be interesting to see what has actually happened in the last, I think the last one that was done, Mr. Mann, was a couple of years ago.
That's correct.
2 or 3 years ago. So maybe worthwhile just to find out where we're at. If you can incorporate that as part of our 2015 analysis or budgets.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Mantle. From a practical standpoint, Mr. Mantle, how amenable is that pedestrian crosswalk to conversion to a four-way stop? And if it is amenable, what sort of costs would the town be looking at?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know exactly what the cost would be. Again, like, it was set up as a pedestrian crosswalk, so more or less they're doubling whatever the costs were, and I believe they're in the neighborhood of $60,000 to $70,000 per location. So probably you can reuse some of the materials that are there. The controllers, again, I'm not an expert in traffic signals, but we can look into that also.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Durley for a second time? Then I have
Yes, thank you,
some
Mr. Mayor. I
questions.
just want to add something to this. I think perhaps very much the increase in traffic now is due to the construction on Highway 20, because people are trying to skirt that. So if in fact something is going to be done, perhaps we should wait until that highway is open just to see if the impact isn't quite as bad. Just putting it on the back burner for just a bit, but keeping it on our radar, because I think one of the contributing factors, I know many people will not drive Highway 20 now until it's finished, so they're looking for alternate ways. Pancake seems to be a viable alternative, so I think we should keep that in the mix as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Mr. Mantle, I have a couple of questions. We actually, and I'll put it in now, maybe it's not fair, but later on in our agenda, under 1147, we have a letter from some residents in the area around the corner from Ms. Wismer, talking about painting lines and line safety of youth actually crossing the road from the south side at the base of Pancake to the north side to the sidewalk. And I remember as we worked through the process to develop these pedestrian crosswalks, and you're right, it was quite a process. We involved members of the community, we involved members of the parent group at Glen Green School that requested this, and the Active Transportation Committee as well, and suggested this as the first best alternative to deal with the issue of safe crossings. Part of that was that painting of lines is also to occur on Pelham Street, and I presume across the crosswalk area from the south to the north on Pancake. Can you let us know the timing of the painting of those, repainting of those lines?
Yes, I believe.
Done?
Yeah, I believe the crosswalks already are painted. The lane painting on Pelham Street is underway right now. They're painting throughout the town, and we've identified the narrowing of those lanes, especially the southbound lane,
Okay.
narrowed slightly.
But what about the crossing across Pancake, which isn't delineated now, it's just a stop?
We can certainly do that, yes.
Okay. That would, I think, help the piece here. And in terms of the issues related to the school, I do want to tell council that I think I received some correspondence regarding this and contacted the trustee for the school board, because that issue regarding, as Ms. Wismer identified, saying that now, because it is a safe walk, that students can walk and aren't bused, that's an issue that the school board is dealing with. So that has been forwarded to the school board to deal with, and the trustee is dealing with that issue. Are there any other comments regarding this? So we're going to do the traffic counts as a way to see and keep Ms. Wismer informed. So the motion is moved by Councillor Ribbiak, second by Councillor Kersey, that the information presented by Helen Wismer regarding the pedestrian crosswalk at Pancake Lane and Pelham Street be received and referred to Public Works staff for remedy and report, and that the petition be included, that was included, also be received. Any further questions, comments regarding that? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll keep you informed on this. Thank you. Next on the agenda is our report from Regional Councillor Beatty. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council and staff. The report before you, I'm just going to comment on for a short period of time on about 4 of the items. Under the corporate services, you've heard before about the Lakefront Enhancement Project, and it's a case where actually dates back to the former chair, Peter Partington, who was quite interested in establishing that kind of concept of looking at the limited lake shores that we do have, preserving it for future generations. It began under his tenure in terms of the purchase of about a 400-foot beach in Wainfleet. It's become extremely popular. I'm told that basically the folks who used to go down to the campground at Long Beach now basically are using that as their primary beach. Very, very light sand and so on. There's some problems with parking in that area. If you're not sure where that beach is, it's roughly where the Cove is from early days in terms of my life anyway. The second one I want to talk about, so basically we've got 2 years of funding, so that's $2 million that have been spread throughout the region for various enhancements to Lakefront. There will be, by the way, for this community in the future, they have not indicated in our discussions exactly how far in, but somewhere in the near future, perhaps in the next term, this will be expanded to be not just lakefront, but waterfront enhancement. So it will include the waterways that we have going through our particular community. Under public health, I bring this to your attention only in that it's a rather unique way that we've solved a problem. There was put out by the province a Healthy Kids Community Challenge, mainly looking at exercise and obesity issues with young children. The problem is that the original criteria more or less caused most of our communities not to be eligible. So Dr. Yeager and her staff basically pooled together and said, look, together amongst our communities, in particular from our knowledge of young people and neighborhood mapping, we do have the issue, even though they're not existing in one separate community. So I'm quite pleased to say we're one of the very few areas in the province where the Healthy Kids Community Challenge funding has been implemented. Down under Public Works, commend the town staff in terms of the fact that we've got close to $36,000 for bikeway facilities along the Port Robinson Road extension. My hope would be that at some point in time, a discussion with our colleagues in Thorold might consider some form of safe zone. They wouldn't likely want to have full-size bicycle lanes, nor would they need it. I'm told that the crossover that's going across the Highway 406 will have bicycle lanes on the crossover itself, but maybe a safe zone from there down to the Greater Niagara Circuit Route would be an enhancement for people to go, not only for people to go from Vaughan Hill to the Circuit Route, but also people in the Circuit Route to come to our community. And lastly, by a very significant vote of 18-5, the last item under Public Works was approved. That was a report on intermunicipal transit outlining guiding principles and future service delivery with funding requests, which will be directed to the 2015 budget process. We've had a long, long discussion the other night in terms of the end of the pilot, or stop the use of the term of the pilot, to look toward more future enhancements in terms of interregional transit. Very clearly, the region does not want to take over that service. They would like to see some amalgam that would involve the current transit providers in the 3 major centers, plus the smaller ones, etc. There's a very interesting pilot project that's being discussed. The owners of Trillium Railway are looking at the possibility of passenger service from the north-south route along the Trillium line from Port Colborne through Welland, Thorold, and St. Catharines. We had in our planning report, I give you the items for consideration we've done, but not the information reports, but one of the things in planning and development was the concept of the nodes and corridor study, looking at where will the GO service stations be along the route, where will the nodes be in Niagara in terms of possible parking that will hook up with intermunicipal transit or park and ride zones, etc. So the very comprehensive look at that aspect. There's every confidence that we will in fact get good news sometime during 2015, hopefully before the Pan Am Games, about the GO train service. I think I reported at early meetings that We have more commuters from Niagara that go to the GTA than Barrie citizens go to the GTA. And they've had a permanent GO service by rail for some time. So we're looking forward to that. Hopefully it will be good news early in 2015. Mr. Mayor, that's my report, but I do have one item that Councilor Rubiak and I attended as a function that maybe I could report on.
Okay.
Of importance to the community.
Go ahead.
A few weekends ago, there was a commemoration at the cemetery in Ridgeville for 3 members of the Haney family. By coincidence, my home was built by one of those individuals, Leonard Haney. I never knew for sure whether he was the minister, Haney, or whether he was the first postmaster of Fenwick, or the warden of Pelham Township. In fact, he was all 3. He's a very busy person. And they said at the commemoration that his funeral procession was the largest ever seen in this area, a very well-known and respected individual in town. What was interesting is not only the commemoration of the 3 brothers of the Haney family who served in the War of 1812-14, but I mentioned that their sister was the first person to discover Isaac Brock when he was shot. Cleaned off his tunic and covered his body in a blanket and so on. So it's a very interesting story. What happened is I talked with Brian Merritt from the Legacy Foundation, and Brian provided me with a War of 1812 flag, which was given to the family, who then in turn gave it to a member of the Legion. Talking to the president of the Legion, very excited about having a wall of commemoration for all members of the community of Pelham who served in the War of 1812 and 14. That didn't make it into the news because there were so many other newsworthy items, but sometime after the election perhaps we'll pull that together in terms of a public communication, because it's important not just for the Haney family, but for all the rest of the individuals in this community which served in that very important war that led to our being able to have a separate country. And it's a case where basically I was extremely pleased with the president of the Legion in terms of how quickly they responded to that suggestion. So if that'll bring attention, thank you for Councilor Rubiak for also attending that event.
Thank you very much, Councilor Beatty. I was unable to attend. Councilor Rubiak, do you want to comment any further on representing council at that event?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was my pleasure to represent council, and I brought greetings on behalf of us all. There were quite a number of descendants from the Haney family in attendance, and they'd come, in some cases, some fairly long distances, as well as a fair representation of people within Pelham who connected themselves with the Haneys either by blood or as regional councillor Beatty through artifact or other means of relevance. So it was a good event. It was a moving event, and it was a pleasure to be there on your behalf.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Now, any questions to Councillor Beatty from members of council on the other parts of his report? Councillor Papp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Beatty, so that I understand, first of all, congratulations to Regional Council for dropping the word pilot. One of the critical things that we've been hearing about throughout the development of this region, including our own case here in Pelham, is the development of an intra or an intermunicipal transit system. So as I understand it from the two of you, does that mean that the current system that's under operation now will continue on for another year, or subject like year to year, or is it just for the period of 1 year?
It's a case where it's moving forward with the hope that we can have further action with the park. There's also funding request as well to enhance the facility that's there with some smaller vehicles to enhance the service that's currently is available. So it's basically, it's a cautious yellow light going green.
Okay.
That's the best way to explain it.
Okay. And I think I provided council with, just to build on what Councillor Beatty said, I did provide council with the public report that was received at the region. That was a few weeks ago. So we should probably also, Madam Clerk can take note that we'll circulate the report for this. Essentially, it's taking it in stages, as Councillor Beatty said. So it does require 2015 budget funding for the extension of the service using the smaller vehicles. But it also outlines, the report also outlines how communities like ours might be able to take advantage of this. And I think it's something that we definitely want to think about as we do our forward planning. We've talked about it here before, and you know, Councillor Beatty and I have worked on the Public Works Committee to make sure that there's a possibility of transit coming to Pelham and linking in. We've worked here around this table in terms of the East Fawn Hill secondary plan and saying that some of those routes need to be transit ready. We have other roads that are transit ready, and I'm actually hearing it as I, go out into the community as well. So I think it's something that we definitely need to think about and now's the time. It's not just something that's might happen. So it's something we definitely have to talk about and work on.
Yeah, and just to follow up, because part of the discussions we had, we met with providers of that kind of service at AMO that would complement a regional service, that in addition to help smaller communities like ours foster that, and we did experiment with it, and it's time with a growing East Fonthill and a growing population, traffic, it's probably the right time to start proceeding with that. So thank you for that information.
Thank you. The final piece, if I might, Councillor Beatty, and then I'll turn it back to you, is that much of the debate was about the triple majority requirement. And
Right.
Councillor Papp, you were among those that led the triple majority for the specialized service,
That's right.
which was attained. There's contemplation in one of the recommendations that we would have to proceed with a triple majority. That means, as council knows, but the community may not, that not only regional council would have to approve it, but local councils and a majority of local councils with 50% of the population or more approving it. And then that service would go somewhere, possibly to the region. It could also go into a service provider. So the possibility that you're discussing is an option. It could be, I'll say, governed by the region, with other aspects being done by the private sector and some being done by local municipalities. So that piece isn't ironed out yet, but this takes the next step so that we can have that discussion and then present that to councils in 2015.
Thank you.
I think
Councillor
it's
Beatty,
fair-
anything further?
It's fair to say that clearly if GO train service became a firm reality for 2 trips in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, that would increase very quickly the viability of regional intermunicipal transit. There are hybrid models. I went to Owen Sound probably about 4 years ago and was quite intrigued by their system. They have a transit system with buses, but it doesn't go to all aspects of the community. So they have a linkage with their taxis. So it's $6 fare to get you the taxi, to get you to where the transit is, to get you to your destination and back again in a seamless kind of process. So we need to be creative, look at the hybrid models that are available, and clearly it's a case where the big runs, the GO run, this possible north-south railway, et cetera, are very big undertakings. It's too bad we couldn't go back to 1950 and have the trolley that was there, but that's past history. It's a case where I think right now it's very encouraging to see the degree of support. 18-5 was a very substantial vote for council that's had some mixed feelings on this issue over the period of time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beatty. Any others with questions, Councillor Beatty? Thank you very much. It's been moved by Councillor Lane, second by Councillor Kersey, that Regional Councillor Beatty's report presented October 6, 2014 be received for information. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you again, Councillor. Thank you. Next, we move to adoption of minutes of council. It's been moved by Councillor Lane, second by Councillor Kersey. The following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. The minutes of the regular meeting of council of September 15th. Any errors or omissions? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next, we move to a very bulky consent agenda item to be considered in block. Are there any items that members would like to consider under separate, lift for separate consideration? I'm sorry, Councillor Rybak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if we could move item 1146, feeding resident safety on Effingham Street into, I'd like to lift that, please.
Okay, thank you. Others? Okay. Been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor King, that the following consent agenda items be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. Recommendations of the Policy and Priorities meeting of September 15th and the Special Committee of the Whole meeting of October 1st. Those are the recommendations. Next, we have the minutes of the P&P Committee meeting of September 15th and the minutes of the Special Committee meeting of the Whole. That was held at the Legion, as council will recall. The third block of items are staff reports of a routine nature for information or action. The first is the erection of a ground sign to replace an existing sign, and the recommendation is that the issue summary report erection of a ground sign to replace existing sign be received, and the council approve the request from Sunset Neon for relief from the Town of Pelham's sign bylaw. The next is regarding the LCBO request for relief from the sign bylaw. that the issue summary report be received, and the council requests the Director of Community Planning and Development to continue his effort with the developer to improve the appearance of the building. The third is the Comfort Maple Legacy Project. The council received the issue report, and the council support and endorse the recommendation of delaying the distribution of the saplings until 2015, when they are bigger. The final is the Drainage Apportionment Agreement, Jones and Sonneveld, and it's that we receive the report and the council approve the agreement on share of assessment, Jones, Sonneveld, and that the clerk be directed to file the agreement as per the requirements of the Drainage Act. Next, we have action correspondence of a routine nature. The first are 3 items dealing with 6 Churchill zoning bylaw amendment. First is from Kay Braun, and the recommendation is that the correspondence from Karen L. Braun dated September 14th be received and referred to the Community Planning and Development staff. The next is from S. Braun. The correspondence from Sig Braun dated September 14th be received and referred to Community Planning and Development staff. And the final is that the correspondence received from A. Cuthbertson regarding 6 Churchill development proposal be received and referred to the Director of Planning for consideration when preparing the recommendation report on the proposal. No doubt all 3 will be considered and included in the report. The next is correspondence from the Royal Canadian Legion regarding their annual poppy campaign. The recommendation is that the correspondence be received and the council approve the request to conduct the annual poppy campaign in the town of Pelham, commencing on Thursday, October 30th, and ending on Tuesday, November 11th, 2014. Next, we have applications for Christmas in Pelham Committee. The recommendation is that the applications for appointment be submitted by S. Harding, B. King, M. Bradbury, and J. Leopard be received, and the council consider the bylaw ratifying the appointments later on this evening's agenda. Councilor Rivyak lifted the speeding and resident safety. So the next item is the stoplight at Pelham Street and Pancake Lane. This is the item I spoke about earlier, and the recommendation is that the correspondence from S. Jeffrey Hurst regarding the stoplight at at Pelham Street and Pancake Lane be received and referred to the Public Works staff for remedy and report. Next, we have 6 items of information correspondence items. Stage 2 archaeological assessment in the East Fawn Hill lands, Niagara Region Investment in Culture Program, the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry regarding our visit during the AMO conference, the Ontario Hockey Federation regarding the Ontario Hockey Federation programs as an information item, a thank you note from A. Potts, Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, and finally, information from Mayor Woodside, Fredericton, regarding Canada's Housing Crunch resolution and thanking us for that resolution. Finally, we have committee minutes, Communities in Bloom Committee of May 21st and August 6th, the Pelham Active Transportation Committee of June 17th, the Library Board minutes of June 25th, Summerfest Committee of July 16th, and the Heritage Pelham Advisory Committee of August 21st. Discussion on any of those items. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. Van Ravensway. Ms. Van Ravensway, could you bring us up to speed on the investment in culture program through the region, and are we looking at perhaps putting an application in there and what that project might look like?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I did attend the information sessions on the funding opportunity a week or so ago, and we are planning on putting an application in with regard to our history, walkthrough history, so we can continue on. That is a project that we discussed with regional staff, and they said that that would qualify. We will be working with the community on that, and there's a meeting set up this week to proceed. The application must go in by October 15th.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Others to any of the items under the consent agenda? I have a question, and there are some individuals here who wrote letters regarding this issue. This is regarding the 6 Churchill zoning bylaw amendment application. Mr. Glover, actually I found the correspondence very helpful, and especially the visual piece of correspondence, so thank you, Ms. Cuthbertson. Mr. Glover, what are the next steps on this? People are asking us about this. Can you give us a bit of an update on this application?
Sure, we're continuing to collect comments through Mr. Mayor. Continuing to collect comments on the application. We have compiled all the comments that have been received to date. We are talking with the landowner as to if there's any modifications or mitigations to the comments that have been raised by the public. I don't have any information at this time on this, however, we expect to meet with him shortly. At that time, if there are significant changes to his application, we'll be going back to the public for information, and then soliciting comments from that as well. And then from that point, bringing a recommendation report. If there's no significant changes to the application, we'll be bringing a recommendation report forward to council for consideration that will include all the comments received and a synopsis, as well as a analysis, as well as our planning recommendation on all that.
Okay, thank you. Can you define significant?
I can't yet. If it's honestly, I don't know what he's proposing. If he is going to propose anything, if it goes down to a single detached house, that's a significant change. However, I think that's in keeping with what the residents would like. I don't know if a public meeting would be required there. If the applicant wants to change it to 4 units or 6 units or whatever the case may be, that's something significant. So we'll go back to the community.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Anyone else further on that? There being none, are we ready for calling the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Councillor Ribbiak, it was so the original motion was moved by, so it's moved by Councillor Ribbiak, second by Councillor Dilly. Correspondence submitted regarding the speeding of resident safety on Effingham Street by Mike, how do you say that name? Pazaban be received.
And it was also to be circulated to.
Oh, and that the information submitted by the writer regarding the traffic issues on Effingham Street be referred to the Niagara Regional Police Services Board.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thank you. I know, Mr. Mayor, that we all read that report and took it very seriously, particularly in light of the events of last week, in which an individual lost their life in a traffic accident. I don't know that I've heard that the investigation has been finished, but I think most understand that the accident had an element of speed involved in it and might have caused that. Mr. Pazaban's presentation was with regard to speeding and the incidents and impact of speeding on the north end of Effingham. And I think we all recognize that stretch of road doesn't suffer from any lack of maintenance or design. The road is in excellent condition, and as you pointed out yourself, Mr. Mayor, that road is safe at posted speeds. But clearly there's an issue, and I think that the recommendation that was made to refer this matter to the Niagara Regional Police is a good one as far as it goes. But Mr. Mayor, my thinking has been that it's our road. We have an excellent process of creative problem solving that has been useful in creating improvements and advantages that otherwise might not appear. And I would like to amend the proposal that was put forward to not only refer this to the Niagara Regional Police, but to make this issue the subject of a creative problem-solving effort under the leadership of obviously someone on staff here who's well-versed in the process, and to see whether ideas can be brought to that issue that go beyond the enforcement approaches that would be taken by Niagara Regional Police. So I offer to you, Mr. Mayor, and to our colleagues that we consider subjecting this to how might we process, because I think that there are even more directions that we can go, more solutions that we can come to if we look at it in that regard.
Okay, thank you. So I think we should take that as an amendment, Councillor?
As an amendment, yes, please.
Okay, so that you would direct staff to undertake a creative problem-solving process regarding this particular stretch of road and see if there's a report back to council on recommendations. Would this be in working together with Some of the residents in the area?
The residents in the area, I think experts where we can find them, the Niagara Regional Police as well.
Okay.
And see if we can't access a full spectrum of resolutions that might be effective.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Pop? You second that? And now discussion to it. Councillor Pop.
I understand where Councilor Ribbiak is coming from on this. I've also had some discussions with residents down there, not only that accident, but unfortunately a few years ago, a close friend of mine lost his life on a motorcycle almost identically in the same area. But at that point, the conditions of the road were not the same. And there have been massive improvements made to do that. My question, though, I'm just trying to, I guess, always, you heard me say this before, is make sure we immunize ourselves that we don't, if we go through this process, it doesn't open us up to any sort of, how to say, liability that, you know, somebody may say, well, you guys made these decisions, and I'm just a little unclear that I wouldn't mind doing it, but I don't want us to be, how to say, vulnerable. Maybe I'm not saying it right. Because if you engage, you're thinking of the local residents in that whole area, Councilor Ribbiak, and plus experts.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are a variety of things that we do in various places on our roads, which I don't think would open us up to any greater level of liability.
Right.
Some forms of signage that may be more appropriate, or some additional forms of signage that might help, lineage on the roads that might help, putting up an indicator of speed that people are traveling at that point. We're not talking about taking on anything else. It's just that I do understand that if we refer this to the Niagara Regional Police, they will, quite properly, look at enforcement protocols, maybe cameras, maybe increased patrols, that sort of thing. It may not touch, however, the full spectrum of things that are possible, that are available to us. And I can't tell you what the ultimate outcome of a creative problem solving would be. I can think of some might help, others will think of more. I just think that it would be a useful exercise to get appropriate people involved in, to come back with a recommendation of a number of things that can be done. And if there aren't any more, fine, we've looked at it and we've tried. But in light of the fact that that piece of road is dangerous, not because of its condition, but simply because it's extremely inviting, apparently for people who enjoy speed, to apply speed in that stretch of the road. And it has caused a number of near misses, and most recently, of course, it has caused a fatality. So I understand that the solution of letting it go to the Niagara Regional Police will accomplish something. I'm just thinking that it is within our power perhaps to accomplish more, at least to find out if we can accomplish more, and we have a process by which to do it. We are unique as a town, as a municipality, in that we do have such an approach. I think we ought to use it.
Yeah, I'm just, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's common knowledge that speeding is a problem not only on Effingham Street but across our whole town. So, if in fact we're going to zero in on this, I feel it unfair. What we need to do is to see if we can go up with some type of a traffic calming thing that would work across the town. Just today, I was talking to an elderly couple, and a lady was hit by a car in a wheelchair on Pancake Lane, one of the other areas that we're looking at. And luckily, she wasn't hurt badly. But here's something. That road is quite hilly, and speed was a factor. So, I think in building on with what Councilor Ribbiak is saying, if we get all these experts in there, let's expand it to say what can we do throughout our whole town rather than just in one location. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor?
May I speak?
No, you may not. I'm sorry, sir. Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In its present form, I would not support the amendment because I think it would leave us open for interpretation that we have somehow inferred that there may have been a problem in that area that led to the accident and may open us up for liability. I much prefer the approach that Councillor Durley has brought forward. We've heard about speeding throughout our community. It's an issue that raises its ugly head every time we turn around, I think. And perhaps a broader discussion looking at the community and methodologies whereby speed could be controlled. I would be open to that. But the amendment in its current form, I would not support, for the reasons outlined, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Others? Councillor Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have to be in agreement, I believe, with Councillor Durley in that it needs to be a broad spectrum of what we're investigating, because although this is a tragic accident that happened here, it took a life. It's not the first life that has ever been lost in Pelham, and as a result of these kind of things, so I think it needs to be more wide across the board. There's a number of areas that need to be addressed, so if we're going to have a how might we session, then I think it needs to be more a broader scope to it.
Okay.
And so I would agree with it.
Thank you. Councillor King?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I also will not be supporting the amendment because as the chair of the former Community Policing Committee, I can attest to the fact that Councillor Durley is absolutely correct in saying that speeding is an issue throughout the town. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter whether it's rural or urban streets. I would prefer to work with the NRP and perhaps work with them as a council staff and representatives of the NRP to have the how might we session, because otherwise we really would need to include every resident on every street where speeding is a factor. So I'd like to see something done, but we need to work with the NRP on the solution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to comment here. I think when I was thinking about this, and Councillor Ribiak identified some things that could be done to perhaps improve this particular situation, and we've done those things in other areas. We've also just recently included certain areas as a community safety zone, which means that fines are double. So I guess when I think about it, there's a certain level of protocol that we're doing it's a bit of a pattern in how we're trying to deal with this. Line painting is one, crosswalks, community safety zone, the idea of signage, the idea of the flashing, lights, things like that, all those different ideas. But there's almost like even speed humps. It's almost like there's a hierarchy of ways in which we can deal with this issue across the community. So I'm going to ask the clerk to read out the amendment, and maybe we can amend the amendment to make it more broad so that we can satisfy the request by Councillor Ribiak and PAP, but also the request that we've received across the community. Would you be able to read that amendment back, please?
Yes, moved by Councillor Ribiak, seconded by Councillor Papp, that under the leadership of town staff, we undertake a creative problem-solving process regarding this stretch of road, working with residents in the area, experts in traffic control, and the Niagara Regional Police to determine if ideas might be brought to the issue that would go beyond the process that the Niagara Regional Police might allow.
So it's really dealing with this issue. Is there an amendment that we can make to make it more broad to satisfy council, or is this something that we're already doing with a policy? I'm thinking about the policy, and it's not the right word or title for it, but the policy that the CEO is working on. As we looked at this what's it called? The neighborhood, Mr. Mantle? The neighborhood traffic management plan, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So we are working on an update of that policy, which is what I'm hearing council saying, that it wants to update that. Mr. CEO?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. I think that the one thing that would be helpful is to have feedback from various organizations to deal with the speeding, but also traffic calming and a number of the other issues that we've heard. That would help inform that policy, and it would be good information to have. Work has started on drafting it, trying to reconcile the concept of guerrilla urbanism and council policy has been a little challenging. but input from those areas with ideas and suggestions on how to do that would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you. So is there a way, Madam Clerk, that we can make it less specific and more broad, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you might consider removing the words regarding this stretch of road and replacing that with regarding Pelham roads. Something a little more generic.
Pelham area.
Pelham area? So would you make that amendment, Councillor?
I'm more than prepared, as long as the mover feels comfortable with that.
Absolutely. I would accept that. I don't know whether there's such a thing as a friendly amendment in this thing, but I would certainly accept that as part of the amendment that I proposed. I think the idea is that we deal with the issue, and
I'd prefer if we amend the amendment.
Fine.
So I'm going to call the question on the amendment to the amendment. Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Rubiak. All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment to the amendment carries. And now to the amended amendment.
Seconded that, please.
That was Papp, Rubiak.
Yeah, we just read
Clerk's
it.
going to reread it.
That under the leadership of town staff, we undertake the creative problem-solving process regarding Pelham roads. Working with residents in, speeding on Pelham roads, working with residents in the area, so you would just say residents,
Just resident, yeah.
as experts in traffic control and the Niagara Regional Police to determine if ideas might be brought to the issue that would go beyond the process that the Niagara Regional Police might allow.
Okay. Okay with that? Are we ready for calling the question on the amended amendment? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. I think it's almost similar to the Community Policing Committee in many respects, except it would be
Yes.
sort of a how to deal with speeds across the community piece. Are there, thank you, are there any other comments regarding the motion as amended? I do want to just add that since we did receive this, I did speak with the Chief of Police last Thursday. I informed him that this would have been the recommendation that we forward this to the Police Services Board. I believe their meeting's coming up on October 23rd. I asked about the cameras, and the chief indicated that those were disallowed at the same time as the photo radar, but there are communities that do use the red light cameras, and there may have been some thought on that. So I did alert them that it would be coming, and he welcomed the presentation. Anything further on the amended motion? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried as amended. Thank you. The next item is my report. I'll go through this quickly. The first is the United Way campaign kickoff, which was held on 16th of September. I attended it along with Councillor Papp. Many thanks to Mark Merloni, campaign chair, and the rest of the cabinet for leading the campaign goal of $650,000, which is their goal this year. Great speeches and involvement by individuals as to why we should support the United Way. So I'd encourage colleagues to do that, and members of the public. The CAO and I hosted the Associate Minister of Health and Long-Term Care at the town on the 17th of September. We informed her about the planned Fawn Hill Medical Center, the Bay Bridge Retirement Home, and about Council's resolution to attract one of the two urgent care centers in South Niagara as the Niagara Health System develops their new Southern Hospital. We received a very positive response. I think that response is printed in the CAO's report under committee, and that she suggested that we continue to work closely with the local health integration network. Biketoberfest was a resounding success again. This is the 12th annual. Congratulations to the fabulous Fenwick Lions for working together with other Pelham service clubs. They've had to solicit the input and involvement of other service clubs because of the thousands that attend this amazing event. They have raised more than $650,000 for Lions charities through the years. Congratulations to Randy Beers of Fenwick for winning the Biketoberfest Harley-Davidson motorcycle. I recall he won something else as well, a lottery or something, so congratulations. Along with all of council, it was my pleasure to attend the Communities in Bloom annual Trillium Awards at Lookout Golf Club on the 23rd of September. Congratulations to the event organizers, the members of Communities in Bloom, and congratulations to all those that won in their categories. I attended the Ruby Awards kickoff breakfast on September 25th, along with Councillor Papp, and it was my pleasure to represent the town and to see the number of Pelham businesses again that have been nominated for the Ruby Awards, and students. So we wish them all the best of luck and look forward to the event on the 17th of October at Lookout Golf Club. It was very pleased. I was very pleased to offer best wishes to Amelia Secan on September 25th. It was her 105th birthday, and she is living at Woodlands of Sunset, and it was my pleasure to present a bouquet of flowers and a certificate on this wonderful occasion, and enjoy cake with her family. So congratulations, Amelia. The CEO and I met with Dr. Suzanne Johnson. She is the new president of the Niagara Health System. You'll recall that the NHS split out the CEO and president roles. So she is the president role, and Dr. Kevin Smith is the CEO role. While meeting was intended to be an introductory meeting, we informed Dr. Johnson about the planned medical center, the Bay Bridge Retirement Home, and our resolution regarding the UCCs. It was a very positive meeting, and she also suggested we continue to work with the LIN, and I believe the CEO is trying to organize. We've already met with the Local Health Integration Network, and we're going to meet with them again. And finally, it was my pleasure to participate in the opening ceremonies for the 11th annual walk, the Rankin Walk, that's held by E.L. Crosley. They have raised more than $100,000 in 11 years. Just great community support. The money raised supports the Rankin Cancer Walk, and all of it stays for local cancer care treatment, including in the hospitals and including Wellspring Niagara. And I spoke about our commitment to Wellspring, which we had again this evening, and how some of those funds, therefore, would not only stay in Niagara, but they will also stay in Pelham. That is my report, and it has been moved by Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Kersey, that my report for October 6th be received for information. Comments or questions? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Ribbiak, that the issue summary report sanitary sewer infiltration investigation be received and the recommendations be approved as follows. That a budget increase for additional inspections related to stormwater infiltration investigation be approved immediately. That the homeowners found to have connected sources of stormwater to the sanitary sewer system be notified of the connections and given 2 months to make the necessary arrangements to remove the connection, and up to 3 months to disconnect the sources, for a total period being 60 to 90 days. And that manhole liners be installed at manhole maintenance holes susceptible to flooding forthwith, and that the region of Niagara be requested to correct the site grading at the Hurricane Road pumping station to ensure that the site does not flood. This is a follow-up of our meeting of October 1st at the Legion. I've heard great feedback from the community on this, and they were pleased with the results of that meeting. Any further discussion at this point? Councillor Lane, Councillor Papp.
Yes, I just have a question, although I agree with what's happening. What is the penalty for non-compliance with this 3 months? Is there one? Are we able to enforce one, or what's going to happen?
Thank you. Who can answer that? Mr. Mantle, we do have a bylaw already in place, is that correct? Do you know?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I believe there's a sewer use bylaw, so they could be fined.
Okay, perhaps we should circulate the sewer use bylaw to refresh your memories. Anything further, Councillor Lane? Councillor Papp?
Very quickly through you to Mr. Manno, Madam Treasurer. If we approve this report, it's talking that we would have to come up with another $95,000 to immediately move forward with the completion of the investigation. Is that available? I mean, is that what we're saying? Mm-hmm. And if those funds are available, then in fact, Mr. Manno can proceed with completing the rest of the hookup.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the funds would come out of the wastewater reserve budget.
Okay. And there's ample funds. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Papp.
Yeah, and so that, because we made that sort of implicit promise, if you want to call it, that once this was approved, that Mr. Manno also, and thank you, Mr. Manno, that was very well done, is that we would proceed with completing all of the other investigations in total, so that we can identify also the non-compliant, because there were some identified 7, but there could be more. Okay, that's great. That's what I wanted to make sure that we're clear on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's for the next one. Others? I thank you, Councillor Papp, for reminding me. I did thank Mr. Mantle privately, but thank you very much, Mr. Mantle. Excellent
job.
presentation, great job having all of the information and answering all of the questions. And I've also thanked, on behalf of council, Ms. Matthews-Malone for answering all those questions as well.
It's a tough meeting.
So thank you. Anything further on this? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Excuse me. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor Lane, that the council receive the issue summary report, Sanitary Sewer Backflow Prevention Incentive Program Eligibility Criteria, and the following recommendation be approved. That the financial incentive program for the installation of sanitary sewer backflow valves be approved, effective immediately, and that eligibility for financial incentives include all existing homes within the town's sanitary sewer system, and that the final incentive program be retroactive to May 15th, 2014, and that financial incentives not be made available to property owners where it has been identified that improper connections to the sanitary sewer system are present until such time as the required disconnections have been completed. I see you, Councillor Durley. I would just draw council's attention to the package that the treasurer put forward, which is information regarding the sewer backflow grant application form. And there's a note there from the treasurer with what the application would be like. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really like the way this has come out. What we need now, and this package is great as well, but what we need is an education package so that everybody is aware that this is there and that it is available throughout all the areas that have sanitary sewers. And what we need to do is highlight the criteria necessary in order to qualify and the process under which. And I think this package does it, but if we can get that out into a forum where people can readily access it, it would be very, very handy, because I'm receiving more calls every day as to when can I get this, when can I get this. So it's imperative that we get this news out very, very quickly.
Thank you. The CEO will respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To answer the councillor's question, I have spoken to marketing and communications. They are putting together a promotional package and advertising information. We're waiting for the approval, and then we'll be rolling that out very shortly.
Thank you very much. Fantastic.
Thank you. Others? Councillor Lane.
Am I to understand from this that anyone that's hooked up to our sanitary sewers, any place in town, is eligible for $1,000? And as a follow-up, can someone tell me how many homes in the town of Pelham are hooked up to a sanitary sewer?
Mr. Mantle. The rationale behind that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the intent is that all homes within the sanitary sewer, the Pelham sanitary sewer area, are eligible for it, with the exception of houses under new houses, like a new build, that sort of thing. They could take that on themselves, as opposed, like, these are all retrofits that we're identifying with this. And I believe there are 4,000 accounts approximately within the sewer shed area.
Councillor Lane.
Well, I don't know. If we do some simple math, are we talking about 4,000 times 1,000, which is, I think the math is something in the neighborhood of $4 million? Are we in a position, honestly, to sit here and say that's what we want to do? When in fact, all the information is saying there's been something like 11 homes or something have been flooded in the last 4 years, and we could be on the hook for $4 million. I have a problem with that math, I'll tell you simply right now.
Right. Absolutely. So I think, Councillor, we may want to put an upset limit to the amount, and also I think it's important for council to know why the recommendation was, and this wasn't brought out at the meeting, but why staff have recommended that it be within the entire sanitary sewer system. Mr. Ciano.
I defer to Mr. Mantle.
Okay, Mr. Mantle.
The logic was based on, if you'll recall, the first report we provided identified, I think, approximately 130 houses within the affected area of the Hurricane Road pumping station. That seemed to be the critical area. We conducted further investigations of the area to see, based on elevation, those that would be affected with respect to their basement elevations and how they relate to the pumping station. Again, it was approximately 130 houses would be affected. At the time, council did not seem to be interested in that, dealing with just simply that number. They wanted to expand it beyond that, and there was no other additional criteria to use. Again, we mentioned that there were very few sanitary sewer backups in the sewer system. They're extremely rare. This is an unusual issue related to a rainstorm that we're investigating. So again, that was the background on it. It seemed to be council's, the indication was given that council was interested in expanding to the entire sewer area.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lane?
I'll let someone else talk, I'll come back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey and Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Lane has touched on a very important issue here. I think back to the report that was brought to that special meeting, Mr. Mantle came up with a number somewhere around $195,000 as a recommendation for the inception of this program. I think that's more doable and more reasonable.
Yes.
That if 195 isn't the magic number, I certainly think we need to establish an upset limit in any given year. The alternative to that would be to create a set of rules and regulations for prioritization of payment, so that, you know, someone who's sitting up on the top of the hill with 0.009 chance of having a sewer flood isn't using up money that we could be utilizing in a priority area. So, while I support the intent of the recommendations here, I would be much happier to see an upset limit. And I think our first starting point might be to refer back to the report that was brought to the special meeting, which was I believe $195,000 was what Mr. Mantle recommended, and I think that's a reasonable starting point, and we see how the uptake is over the first year, and then we can adjust our upset limit up or down depending upon the uptake.
Thank you. I think it was it 195 or 165, Mr. Mantle?
I believe it was 165.
165?
So that's fine with me.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just, during the time where all of this hit the paper, I received calls from people that did not live in that area that have already experienced floods and are at risk of losing their insurance if they get it again. This was why I brought up that others are necessary. I think one of the criteria in areas may be, just as you mentioned, somebody that there's no likelihood of a flood because they're living way above everybody, should be, you know, I don't think in common sense would be that these people are even going to come for it. But those, I know of two, at least two, that through my walking the streets these past couple of weeks, that already experienced floods through their sanitary sewer. And these are the people that I'm talking about that are susceptible and really that are at risk of losing their insurances. This is the important factor. If it's coming up through the sewer, which is ours, and it's causing them that impact, we need to act on those. That's where I came from with that first suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On a slightly different tack, I don't know whether our requirements currently for building permits demand the installation of a backflow protector, but it seems to me that going forward, certainly from the date of the acceptance of this proposal, that all new connections to our sanitary sewer line should be provided with should install a backflow protector as a matter of course, as a matter of building permit, actually.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Zimmer, can you fill us in since you're here?
Oh.
Our chief building official?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The building code requires anything below the highest manhole. Section 724 of the code requires a backflow preventer. However, if you're above that elevation,
Please.
Are required. However, if
Thank
you're in future, you can put it into a bylaw that it is required, but at this point, that's the only time that there's one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as just a follow-up, it would seem to me that if the requirement is below a certain level, elevation, then that should probably be the criterion that Councillor Kersey is referring to as the criterion by which we would accept payment, or alternatively, if we're going to allow any current connection to receive the backflow preventer, then all future development at any elevation would need to have that installed. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves financing the building of new buildings to an extent.
Right.
I make that as a possible amendment as we go through this.
Okay. Mr. Glover, can you comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in terms of new construction, there isn't a provision currently that requires the backflow preventer, with the exclusion of what Mr. Zimmer has suggested. However, if it's council's desire, we can include that in subdivision agreements going forward so that all new construction will be required, as well as we can include it in site plans for multi-residential. In terms of I think it would be difficult, perhaps more consultation should be held or meetings to discuss the issue of how we would set the elevation as proposed, and who would monitor that and who would review it and how we would catch that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, anything further?
Thank you. My view is that the two should be consistent with one another. Otherwise, we're going to be spending money that we don't need to spend going forward.
Okay, so there's two issues we're dealing with. The first is the incentive program and an upset limit that some have talked about. And then the second is directing staff to investigate adding backflow preventers to agreements. I'd like to take them in the order that they arose. And the CAO has an idea that he wants to suggest to council, and I think in terms of the upset limit for the rest of the area. Or maybe I'll say it. Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might advise council that rather than opening up the program to the entire town, that perhaps it be restricted to the sewer shed area that we discussed and council committed to the other evening, as well as other residents in the town that have been previously affected by flooding that could demonstrate that, and they could demonstrate a need rather than just anyone that feels like a backflow preventer would get one installed.
Exactly. Okay. So in terms of a solution, maybe an upset limit on that amount, whether it's 5,000 or 10,000, so that the upset limit would be 165,000 for the or the sewer shed area, which is what staff had recommended, and then maybe an additional fund for the rest of town should residents show proof of previous flooding, and then they can apply for it. Thoughts? Councillor Pat?
Well, I like that thought, Mr. CEO, because let's deal with what we dealt with the other night, and we'll take care of those residents and try to simplify it as much as we can. And then any of the residents that, as Councillor Dury has mentioned, and I too have encountered the same thing, that if they can prove and shed evidence that indicates that they have been flooded, that they would also be eligible for this. Because this is going to take some time to monitor, and you're right, Councillor Lane, you don't want to open yourself up to everyone applying, that you have to meet certain conditions. And what I'm hearing, one of the conditions we've already heard, and that's the second part, I understand, Mr. Mayor, is that all new subdivision agreements would have to include whatever the wording is and whatever elevations. In the meantime, let's deal with the existing one and any others that have come forward that can prove and give us the evidence, and we'll offer them the incentive of $1,000 and whatever we need. And I ask, Mr. Mayor, through you to the treasurer, would this come out of the reserve, the sewer water reserve? So that's where it'll be funded. Okay. That seems to be a nice trade-off until we can get comfortable with, if we get to the policy where we put it across everyone. So at least get it started, because we did make a commitment. And we want to follow through on that commitment, plus I think anyone else that can show us, on a shadow of a doubt, that they've been affected by a sewer backup that could have been prevented, then we'll deal with it one by one, case by case, until we get to the stage where we're comfortable. I'm comfortable with that, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
so will you make the motion?
I will make that motion.
Okay, the amendment then is that an upset limit of 165,000, so that it would be the eligibility for financial incentives include all existing houses within the affected sewer shed area, with an upset limit of 165,000, and an upset limit of,
I don't know, maybe let's say $25,000, just to be safe. And we can always adjust these. The beauty of us is we can always come back and adjust these amounts, but that we have an upset limit of $25,000 to start to those residents that have been affected by flooding in areas outside of the current watershed or the sewer shed area. Is that fair? Maybe you can wordsmith it, whatever, but you know where I'm going with this.
Yes, okay, thank you. Is
Thank
there
you,
a
Mr. Mayor.
seconder for that? Councillor Durley will second that. Discussion to that, and I think incumbent in that is the idea of proof of previous flooding. Is
You
that
have to
correct?
prove it, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Lane.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to get a handle on where the $1,000 number came from, because from the meeting that we had the other night, there are people there that said they've had these installed and they cost them in the neighborhood of $900 or whatever, and then we're saying that we're going to pay $1,000. Yeah, well, up to 1,000.
Yeah.
But if someone pays $950, we're now paying for their entire installation. Is that really an incentive program, or is that something even beyond an incentive program? Should there not be a cost sharing for these installations? I mean, should the town really be doing the 100% installation if it's $1,000? That's a question for food for thought for my fellow colleagues.
Thank you. I think the minutes indicate that the costs ranged from 1,200 to
They were higher than
1,700, and some as high as 2,000. So,
I'm only going on what the person said there who had one installed.
okay. Thank you. Others to the amendment? Councillor King.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if we're dealing with the current watershed area, and then considering those that are outside of that watershed area on a come-forward basis, will we cap off how far back we would go to consider compensating others as well?
Thank you. Who wants to speak to that? I think the program would be retroactive. Councillor Durley, you raised this issue because individuals wanted to put in the backflow preventers or were thinking about it, but haven't yet. Is that correct, Councillor?
Yes, it's actually
Right.
people that have experienced
Right.
the flood and are eager to put them in. Actually, I got word one fellow is away on vacation. As soon as he gets back, he's going to install one. And the other one is saying, I'm just waiting for news as to how I can enter into the agreement in order to get it done. And these are people that have been flooded already. So there is a retroactive in the motion, actually, to go to May 15th, and that just put the time of that big rain, so that's reasonable, I think.
Okay, thank you. Councillor King, anything further?
Thank you, no.
Okay, thank you. To the amendment, all those in favor? Any opposed? The amendment carries. Councillor Ribbiak, you wanted to put a further amendment about directing staff to investigate adding backflow preventers to subdivision agreements, is that correct? Mr. Glover?
For clarification, when I was with a previous municipality, a similar issue came up, and it was put carte blanche. All new developments need a backflow prevention device, regardless of the elevation. So there was no, it was a clear direction that everybody be protected going forward.
Okay. But do you want to do that tonight, or do you want to get staff to report on it?
Yeah.
I'm fine with staff coming back with a report later on. What I want to do is to ensure that the incentive we're talking about deals with existing builds, and that there should not, now that we know that the problem might exist, that houses that are being constructed in the future prepare for that potential themselves. It should help them with their insurance rates, if nothing else.
Right. Okay, so you're fine with this, that we direct, your amendment then would be to direct staff to investigate adding backflow preventers to future subdivision agreement?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay.
Good.
Yep, I'm good
Is there a
with that.
seconder for
So
that?
it's just the staff direction
Yes.
at this point,
It's just,
And Councillor Kersey will second that.
I guess.
Okay. Further, Mr. Glover?
Sorry, point of clarification, does that include site plans as well as I proposed?
I was looking for your language on
Back with
this,
the
so
report.
future agreements, how's
Subdivision and
that?
site plan agreements
Subdivision and site plan agreements.
for residential
Commercial.
or commercial? Okay.
All.
due to the planner, is that what you saw in other municipalities? It was applied to site plan agreements plus builds? Then
All new
that would-
development,
Then you
yes.
would all new development, that's okay.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that as a friendly amendment. So to future subdivision and site plan agreements. There any other comments? I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment carries. Now to the main motion as amended. Are there any other amendments? Are we ready for calling the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries as twice amended. Thank you. Next on the agenda, it has been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor Lane. The issue summary report regarding request for relief from the fence bylaw be received, and the council approve the request for an extension to the existing fence that will exceed the maximum height permitted under the bylaw, 1034 at 15 Meadowvale Drive, Fawn Hill. Discussion. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is that the requirement or the request for the additional height is to act as a block between residents and what is on our property around the arena. Seems to me that if we've created some unsightliness, then wouldn't the responsibility be ours to deal with that, rather than force residents to think in terms of putting up an extension on their fence? I know that if my neighbor had something that was something I wouldn't want to see, my first inclination would be to go to him and say, do something about it. And perhaps as a final result, I would modify my fence to do it. So I'm just wondering whether we shouldn't be also thinking about what are we going to do with what we have on our property there that is creating an issue with our neighbors.
Thank you. Who wants to answer that? Mr. Limburner, Mr. Glover.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Guilty.
This particular property has a number of large evergreen trees.
Yes.
A couple of them have died. They've had to remove them, so they created a hole between them. Other neighbors have put up evergreens, and they're quite effective. Unfortunately, the arena has been there for 40 some odd years. The operations have been working under the arena for 40 some odd years.
37, but anyways.
You know, it's the, and I don't know what solution we would have in the arena is to move it, but it's that's the owners have cited that there's light pollution, noise pollution from the arena and the operations that exist around it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Then for
The other compelling piece, Councillor, if I just build on what the staff have said, it says their backyard is 3 feet above the arena lands. So it's really their backyard that's higher compared to the arena lands? Point number 4.
Well, indeed, if it's their property that's creating their problem, then of course it ought to be their solution. My understanding was that there was not just the buildings in orderly state on the property, but there might have been other equipment or other pieces available. But I take the point.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councillor Lane.
I'm just, thank you. I don't like to always agree with Councillor Ribbiak, but he's absolutely right, because this has been before us before, when people came and were complaining about the action and everything that's going on in the arena. A lot of trucks, you know, and everything, a lot of action going on. I mean, there's things stored at the arena, by there today, that don't need to be stored, in my opinion, at the arena. I don't know how many picnic tables are piled up there and other things. It looks to me like more than an arena. It looks like it's a work shed type area, and I think it doesn't belong there, quite frankly. It's an area with built-up homes and very densely populated. I think an arena should look like an arena and a place for parking cars, and that's it. I think the town could go a long way to cleaning that area up, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor. Others? Are we ready for Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'd like to ask our Director of Planning, are we in compliance with our zoning bylaw?
Mr. Glover.
Through Mr. Mayor, the uses are in compliance with the zoning bylaw. In terms of the aesthetics of the site, storage of certain materials, I'm not aware what's being stored there on a daily basis. I would propose that if the aesthetics are the concern here, and the use is not, there's mitigations that could be applied, landscape features for screening, different ways to clean up the site for the views to the site.
Thank you.
Hope that.
In light of that, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment that, in addition to granting this height amendment or variance, that we direct staff to investigate the current conditions at the arena and bring back to council a report on what mitigating steps might be taken to improve the aesthetics and the functionality of the surrounding area.
You want to report on what they might do, or just what they've done to make it better?
Well, I suppose it depends how much it's going to cost and if we've got money available to do it. So I think a report might be in order.
Thank you. Is there a seconder to that amendment? Councilor Durley? To that amendment? Anything further? Councilor Lane?
I don't know if it's exactly to the amendment, but to what we're discussing. My question would be is, if we allow someone to put up a fence that's at least a couple feet or whatever higher, and then at some point in the near future down the road, the arena is no longer there, and this property is developed, now have we created what would be another issue with a fence in somebody's neighbor's backyard that is oversized, and we have no recourse but to live with it? I don't know. I'm looking down the road. I'm not looking for now. I'm looking down the road. What happens then? Is everybody in the neighborhood then going to be allowed to have 8-foot fences or whatever? I think it's something that needs to be considered.
Okay, it's not really to the
Maybe not
amendment?
to the amendment, but to the motion.
So the main motion, so we'll get back to that on the main motion. Councilor Papp, to the amendment about directing
Just to the
staff
amendment, just to quickly, the comments I received, similar to Councilor Durley, were along Rhodes Court, the new subdivision, just commenting, and I'll say generally, the whole layout and aspect, what's going on. So if there's some way we can fix it up, and staff can come back on how we can do that, that would appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Anything further to the amendment? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried, so that's staff direction. Councilor Lane, are there any, so the motion that's before us as amended is to approve the request. Your options would be, I guess, to amend it or to divide it and not vote in favor of approving the request.
Based on what I've heard around the table, I'll nearly not vote for it. Okay, I'm opposed to it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Are we ready for the motion as amended? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried as amended. Thank you. Next item is regarding council appointments to committees, and it's moved by Councilor Lane, seconded by Councilor Kersey, that the issue summary report, council appointments to committees be received, and the councilors who are appointed to volunteer committees of council are considered to be ex-officio members and not permitted to assume the role of chair. Discussion? Councilor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am supportive of this. I think it's important that we have council representation on committees. The feedback I certainly have had would support that. And I have no problem with seeing councilors as ex officio. I think that does remove some of the areas of contention that have been raised perhaps by staff members and other committee members. I guess the one question I have, Mr. Mayor, is the motion that I made back in the day was that we would have a more fulsome discussion about committees in general and what the role those committees would play, what committees might not be necessary any longer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I wonder if that is planned to be brought forward at policy P&P.
Thank you. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To answer the councilor's question, yes, we're working on it. It's a rather large task. We wanted to deal with the issue of council participation first, and then we can take the next step and start looking at the review of the various committees and what their role and functions are. It's been, not to make excuses, but an incredibly busy time for both the clerk and I, particularly the clerk. So, you know, we are working on that, and we'll be coming back with the other things that council's asked us to investigate.
So that'll be November.
Ideally, that would be November, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilor?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councillor Rubiak.
Thank you. Just building on Councillor Kersey's thought, we are also working, I guess, on a kind of a standard template of terms of reference, and the role of councillors would be well laid out in that one as well.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to add to this, and I'm not trying to muddy the waters, but I did have a discussion with the chair of the Architectural Design Committee recently, and he said that, I don't know if they discussed it at their meeting, but he was thinking maybe if we move ahead with this, that maybe they should have a council representative as ex officio on that committee. So that's something that council may want to think about when this issue comes back.
Sure.
Okay. So are we ready for calling the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Ribiak. The council received the issue report regarding, we've already done this one.
We already did.
That was a duplicate. That was the supper market. Now to the municipal drain. It's been moved by Councillor Ribiak, seconded by Councillor Kersey. The council received the issue summary report, engineering services for Horton Municipal Drain Engineers Report, and the council approved the appointment of K Smart Associates Limited as engineer to prepare a report for drainage, which would be called the Horton Municipal Drain, as petitioned in accordance with Section 8 of the Drainage Act. Discussion. Councilor Rubiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My thought in bringing this out of the committee of the whole to this table is that my understanding is that we are obliged to name a drainage superintendent. This is work that needs to happen. If we had done this in committee of the whole, of course, we would have had to bring it back to the council table a month from now, and we'd have lost that month. There aren't that many options that we can consider, and so I think looking at it once and making a decision one way or the other, I think there's probably only one way to decide, we'll get it started faster. And I appreciate that we brought this forward to this table because of that.
Thank you very much. Others? Mr. Zimmer, just regarding the timing of this, can you inform council how long this it's anticipated with K Smart and Associates Limited? I presume that they've put in a timeline. Can we hear about that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, generally with the Drainage Act, you appoint an engineer, and then the engineer has an on-site meeting, and at the on-site meeting, all affected landowners or possible affected landowners have very informal meeting on site. Generally, after the petition is filed with the clerk and is appointed by council, which is now has been done, probably within a month, I would think they would have an on-site meeting, and then after that, they would have a preliminary report to discuss that with the type of construction and the cost prorated for that drain. Then after that would be a formal meeting with council to discuss the report, and it would move forward under the Drainage Act from there.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to hear that the stages of that, because I think we received a report here and it looked like folks still wanted to discuss it further. So as long as those things are worked out, maybe at an open house or something later on when it's done. But in terms of timing, are we talking, you're saying within the next month they'll meet, are we talking this can be done in the spring? Is that correct?
Providing there's no appeals to the Drainage Referee, Drainage Act, or Drainage Tribunal or anything like that, you should, a drain this size, you should be able to have tendered and possibly by spring. Depends on the complexity, but if no appeals, do construction by spring very easily.
Well, that's the best case scenario.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Any others? Councillor Durley.
Just curious, Mr. Mayor, and through you to somebody that can have the history of this, how long has there been a problem at this location?
Mr. Mantle, reluctantly putting up his hand.
It's been ongoing for a number of years. In various work orders, we've had instances of flooding and what have you at that location. So I would think early part of like early 2000s, I would think 2005, 2003, that sort of thing.
Before that, there's no record of, through you, Mr. Mayor, there's no record of things, or records don't go back that far.
We looked at our request for service, which extend back into the 90s, and we couldn't find anything.
Okay. through you again, was there an event that changed that caused things to happen?
I can't, I don't know if there was or not. I wasn't part of it. I just looked through the request for service to see what had happened.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, following up on that, it appears, and you know, I have to be careful how I word what I'm going to say, but it appears that there has been some changes, and I think Mr. Mantle is right when these changes came about, and I think those changes are in correlation with some action in that neighborhood. And then, and I suppose because of that action, now we're into a situation where a number of people who before didn't have an issue now have an issue with drainage, and the town being one of them, because the road now floods. And although I suspect that now maybe we've got ourselves into a bind that we have to go this particular route with this municipal drain, I'm not convinced that at the end of the day that is the most proper way to be handling this. If someone has done something and there's been a new business in town, and or that business has done something to alter the landscape, and now all of a sudden every rainstorm creates a flood, I think that needs to be certainly at least investigated, and I'm not sure if that's going to be investigated when the engineer is involved or what, but it seems to me that the onus has now become on all the property owners that have been affected by the water, who have absolutely nothing to do with this situation other than being recipients of massive amounts of water that should probably not be there. And it's just very frustrating for the people in the area, and I think we'll find at the end of the day when this all comes to fruition that people are going to be somewhat upset that they have to pay for a municipal drain based on some occurrences that really was none of their fault. So that's my comment on it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Zimmer, perhaps. If the engineer goes on site, is appointed, goes on site, does his engineering study, and in fact finds out that there is one or two or whatever offending landowners, can he come back and advise the town that a municipal drain is not necessary, provided certain corrective actions would be taken by the identified properties?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the engineer's report can identify many things, and that could be one. He can also comes up with many different solutions. It may not be a drain, it may be berming, it could be swales, it could be many things. That's the nice thing about a municipal drain. It's very informal. They meet on site. Everybody puts their concerns forward, and then he goes and figures out what caused it. And you know, possibly there could be more structures go up on somebody's property that causes more of an issue, and that's all dealt with and looked at that time. So it's a very good process and a very fair process, and it's worked very well throughout the province. So yes.
Mr. Mayor, in light of those comments, I think that, in other words, council will have the information that we need to make the most appropriate direction. So I definitely would support the appointment of the engineer as outlined in the report.
Okay, thank you. Others? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We look forward to that report and resolution of that matter that came before us. Next is presentation consideration of bylaws. Moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Lane. The Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaw, do now read first, second, and third time and pass the same, that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. 1, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 3217, confirming various appointments to boards, commissions, and committees of the Town of Pelham, and to appoint Sandra Harding, Jamie Lepper, Bill King, and Matthew Brodry to the Christmas in Pelham Committee. 2, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 3310, being a bylaw to prohibit or regulate signs and other advertising devices. 3, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into a subdivision agreement with Hurt Inc., Rosewood Estates subdivision. And 4, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 3438 and to add reference plan 59R15164 to an existing encroachment agreement with C.T. Nicholas. Questions on any of those bylaws? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and passed. Bylaw 3551, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council of the town of Pelham held at its regular meeting on the 6th day of October 2014. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Lane, that this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, November 3rd, 2014, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned. Take a few minute break.